You don't have the keys? What do you mean? The home is deserted. That can't be right, I muttered, clutching my phone with white knuckles. I was pacing back and forth in front of the house that had once been mine, and the neighbor across the street was watching me from his porch. During spring break, I drove 4 hours from my university to Bakersfield, where I discovered my childhood house with a for sale sign hammered into the front grass. My name is Jasmine Rojas. There were no drapes or furnishings visible inside, and the windows were empty. Like unwelcome visitors, 3 black trash bags were sitting on the doorstep. I peered into one and saw my books and clothing, remnants of the life I had left behind when I departed for college. Reluctantly, my Uncle Thomas added, "Your father said you should have called first over the phone. Last week, they relocated. Did they not inform you?" I uttered the word no, only managing to get past the knot in my throat. They didn't tell me anything. After hanging up, I dialed my dad. Every ring seemed to go on forever. "Hello." His tone was lifeless and bland. "The home is vacant, Dad. My belongings are in rubbish bags on the porch. What's happening?" A pause. Then, "We relocated. Now you're an adult. Take care of it." The call went dead. Stunned, I gazed at my phone. I returned the call to voicemail. I tried using my mom's phone. Likewise. The phone of my younger brother. No response. I was suddenly no longer a part of their life. Not even the courtesy of a forwarding address, no warning, no farewell. As I stood there, I observed the deep shadows that the sunset was casting across my former front yard. My father and I had planted a maple tree when I was 8 years old, and it was still standing tall with branches that extended towards a house that was no longer ours. Each month, I would send home a portion of my scholarship funds. I worked part-time and kept my pre-law GPA at 3.9. I had been the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who never caused trouble. And this was my reward. I didn't cry. Not then. Instead, I picked up those garbage bags and loaded them into my car. I checked into a motel for the night, laying out my salvaged possessions on the scratchy bedspread. A few textbooks. Winter clothes I'd left behind. A broken picture frame with a photo of my family at the beach 3 summers ago. Everyone's smiling. Everyone a liar. That night, I made a decision. If they wanted to erase me, I would return the favor. I would cut all ties, and I would build something they could never take away from me. I grew up believing family meant unconditional support. My parents had immigrated from Mexico before I was born, and family first was practically our household religion. My father worked double shifts at the manufacturing plant, and my mother cleaned houses. They reminded us daily of their sacrifices. "We came here with nothing so you could have everything," my father would say over dinner. "Education is your ticket." I took those words seriously. While other kids went to parties, I studied. When my high school friends got summer jobs at the mall, I interned at the local courthouse. My acceptance to university on a pre-law scholarship was supposed to be the first return on their investment. My younger brother Gabriel was different. He struggled in school, preferred video games to books, and had been caught shoplifting twice. Yet my parents never threatened to kick him out. They defended him, supported him, forgave him. "He's finding his way," they'd say. Maybe that's why their abandonment blindsided me, the responsible daughter discarded while the troubled son remained under their wing. That night in the motel, I called Professor Wilkins, my constitutional law instructor who had become something of a mentor. "They just left," she asked, disbelief evident in her voice. "Yes. I'm not sure what to do next. I can't exactly go back to the dorms during break." My voice cracked, the emotion finally breaking through. "Listen to me, Jasmine. Come stay with me until the dorms reopen. We'll figure this out together." Professor Wilkins lived alone in a Victorian house filled with books and 2 elderly cats. She gave me her guest room and a key. "No time limit," she said. "Focus on your studies." That spring break, instead of relaxing, I threw myself into research. Professor Wilkins had connected me with a summer legal internship at Riverton Law Partners, specializing in housing discrimination cases. The irony wasn't lost on me. Channel it, Professor Wilkins advised over tea one evening. The best advocacy comes from personal experience. I nodded, thinking about the family photos I'd found crumpled at the bottom of one garbage bag, my quinceañera, high school graduation, all the milestones my parents had celebrated, only to discard the evidence like trash. That night, I blocked their numbers. All of them, my father, mother, brother, even aunts and uncles who might enable their behavior. If anyone asked about my family, I simply said, "We're not in touch." No dramatic story. No plea for sympathy. I was rebuilding from scratch, and sentimentality had no place in the foundation. The summer internship at Riverton Law Partners changed everything. What started as basic research and coffee runs quickly evolved when my supervisor, attorney Eleanor Grayson, discovered my knack for connecting with clients. "You have something rare, Jasmine," she told me after I helped calm a young mother facing eviction. "You actually listen." I was assigned to assist with intake interviews, meeting families being pushed out of affordable housing by developers, elderly tenants facing illegal rent increases, students dealing with predatory landlords. Their stories resonated with me in ways I couldn't articulate. One evening, after a particularly grueling day interviewing 3 families from the same apartment complex who were all served simultaneous eviction notices, I stayed late organizing case notes. Eleanor found me there at 9 p.m., surrounded by papers. "Burning the midnight oil?" she asked, leaning against the doorframe. "These families have nowhere to go," I said. "The developer's offering them 2 weeks in a motel as compensation for breaking their leases early." Eleanor sighed. "Unfortunately, that's often more than the law requires." "But it's not right," I insisted. 2 weeks isn't enough time to find new housing, especially with security deposits and first month's rent. These people will end up homeless. The system is broken." Eleanor agreed. "So, what are you going to do about it?" That question lingered with me for days. What could I, a second-year pre-law student with an internship, possibly do? The answer came unexpectedly during a mandatory university financial aid seminar. The presenter mentioned that students could apply for social innovation grants, seed money for projects addressing community needs. The application deadline was just 2 weeks away. I stayed up 3 nights straight drafting a proposal for a housing advocacy program specifically for students and low-income families. I called it Safe Space Initiative. Eleanor helped me refine the legal aspects, and Professor Wilkins reviewed the final application. While waiting to hear back about the grant, I received the first of many calls from my parents. It came 6 months after they had abandoned me, a voicemail from my father. "Jasmine, your mother is worried about you. Call us." No apology. No explanation. Just an expectation that I would respond to their summons like an obedient daughter. I didn't call back. 3 days later, another voicemail. "This silent treatment is childish, Jasmine. We're your family." I saved the message, but didn't respond. The calls increased in frequency. Sometimes my father. Sometimes my mother. Occasionally my brother. Their tones ranged from demanding to pleading. None acknowledged what they had done. When the university awarded me the Social Innovation Grant, $25,000 to launch Safe Space Initiative, I didn't share the news with them. When I was offered a paid position at Riverton to continue my work through the academic year, I celebrated with Professor Wilkins and Eleanor instead. My new family was forming around me, people who supported me not out of obligation, but out of genuine respect and care. By January, the Safe Space Initiative had assisted 23 students fighting wrongful evictions. We operated out of a converted storage room at Riverton Law Partners, with 2 volunteer paralegals and a rotating schedule of law students earning clinical hours. Most days, I rushed from classes to the office, spending evenings reviewing cases and refining our approach. The work was exhausting, but fulfilling. Each family that maintained housing, each student who avoided Homelessness felt like a personal victory. I was building something meaningful from the wreckage of my own displacement. My parents, meanwhile, had increased their campaign to reconnect. The calls came with alarming frequency, sometimes multiple times per day. When I continued ignoring them, they enlisted relatives. "Your mother cries every night," my Aunt Lucia texted. "Whatever they did, can't you forgive them?" I didn't respond to these messages either. Forgiveness required acknowledgement, and they had yet to admit any wrongdoing. One Tuesday afternoon in February, I was counseling a sophomore named Devin who had returned from winter break to find his landlord had rented his room to someone else, despite his paid-up lease. As we discussed his options, the office phone rang. "Safe Space Initiative." "This is Jasmine," I answered, gesturing apologetically to Devin. "Jasmine, is that you?" It was my mother's voice. My stomach dropped. "How did you get this number?" "It's on your website," she said. "Why haven't you returned our calls?" "We've been worried sick." Devin shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I covered the mouthpiece. "I'm sorry. I need to handle this. Would you mind waiting outside for a moment?" After he left, I uncovered the phone. "This is my workplace. Please don't call here again." "We're your parents," my mother said, her voice breaking. "We have the right." "You lost that right," I interrupted, "when you put my belongings in garbage bags and sold our house without telling me." "I'm not doing this now." "Your father made a mistake," she pleaded. "We had financial troubles." The house was being foreclosed on. We were embarrassed. For a moment, I felt a crack in my resolve. Financial troubles. Foreclosure. They had never mentioned money problems. "If you were in trouble, you could have told me," I said, my voice softer. "I would have helped. I was already sending money home." "Your father wouldn't allow it," she said. "His pride. You know how he is." I didn't know. My father's pride was a force of nature, shaping our family dynamics since childhood. But pride didn't justify what they'd done. "I need to get back to work," I said firmly. "Please respect my boundaries." I hung up before she could respond, hands trembling slightly as I placed the receiver down. The brief conversation had unearthed feelings I thought I'd successfully buried. Anger, certainly, but also a lingering sense of responsibility toward them. Later that evening, Eleanor found me still at my desk, staring at Safe Space's call log. "Everything okay?" "You seem distracted," she said, perching on the edge of my desk. I hesitated, then told her about the call. "Part of me wants to believe they had a good reason," I admitted. "That it wasn't just cruelty." Eleanor considered this. "People rarely act from pure cruelty, Jasmine. But reasons and excuses aren't the same thing. Whatever financial troubles they had, they chose to handle it by abandoning you without warning." She was right. And yet, my mother's explanation had planted a seed of doubt. What if there was more to the story? What if they had been desperate? The next day, against my better judgment, I did something I'd resisted for months. I searched for my family online. What I found shattered any emerging sympathy. A cheerful Facebook post from my mother, dated just 3 weeks after they'd moved, showing her, my father, and Gabriel smiling in front of a new house. The caption read, "New beginnings." So blessed. There had been no financial crisis. There had been no foreclosure. There had just been a decision to leave me behind. The unanswered calls accumulated like falling snow, 120, 150, 200. My parents' voicemails evolved from demanding to pleading, occasionally peppered with information about their new lives, as if we were having a normal, ongoing conversation instead of a one-sided bombardment. Gabriel got accepted to community college, my mother reported in late March. "He's studying computer programming." "You always said he was smart." "The neighbors brought us tamales," my father announced in April. "Not as good as your mother's, but they're trying to be welcoming." These casual updates infuriated me more than their earlier demands. They were living their lives, forming new community connections, celebrating milestones, all while I was still processing the trauma of their abandonment. Meanwhile, Safe Space Initiative was gaining attention. A local news station ran a feature on our work, interviewing several students we'd helped. The university newspaper followed with a profile highlighting my innovative approach to housing justice. These small spotlights increased our caseload dramatically. "We need more resources," I told Eleanor one afternoon, gesturing at our overflowing intake folders. "More volunteers, more space, more funding." "I might have a solution," she replied. The Watkins Foundation was accepting proposals for their annual social justice grants. The award was substantial enough to hire staff and rent proper offices. The application process was grueling. I spent weeks drafting and redrafting our proposal, gathering testimonials from clients, and compiling data on housing insecurity among students. The final document ran to 47 pages, detailing Safe Space's mission, methodology, and measurable impacts. 2 days after submission, I received a call from an unfamiliar number with my hometown's area code. "Hello," I answered cautiously. "Jasmine, it's Mrs. Hernandez from next door, our former neighbor." I hadn't spoken to her since the day I found the house empty. "I hope it's okay that I called," she continued. "Your brother gave me your number. He said you might not answer if you saw their names on caller ID." My defenses rose immediately. "If this is about reconnecting with my parents—" No, she interrupted. "Well, not directly. It's about the house. Your old house. Someone broke in last night. The police think they were looking for valuables. But of course, the place is empty. Your father asked me to check if perhaps you had come back for something. He didn't want to report a break-in if it was just you." I nearly laughed at the absurdity. "I haven't been back since that day, Mrs. Hernandez. Besides, I don't have keys anymore." "That's what I told him," she sighed. "But there's something else. The intruder left something behind. An envelope with your name on it. The police gave it to me, since I'm watching the property." My heart skipped. "What does it say?" "I haven't opened it," she said. "It's addressed to you, but it looks official. There's a law firm's name on it. Official mail at my old address? No one should be sending me legal documents there. I'd updated my address months ago." "Can you open it?" I asked. "Just tell me what it says." I heard paper tearing, then silence. "Mrs. Hernandez?" It's about your grandmother's estate," she said finally. "Your maternal grandmother in Mexico. My grandmother had died when I was 13. I barely remembered her." "What about her estate?" "It says you've inherited property in Waka," Mrs. Hernandez read slowly. "And there's a bank statement, Jasmine. It shows a balance of over $400,000. My mind reeled. That can't be right. My grandmother lived simply. She didn't have that kind of money. The letter says the property was developed after her death. Resort condominiums. Your portion is the proceeds from the sale of 2 units. I grabbed a pen, scribbling as Mrs. Hernandez dictated the law firm's contact information. My hand shook as I processed the implications. "Does it say when this inheritance became available?" Mrs. Hernandez paused, paper shuffling. "Yes, it was finalized last March. Last March. 1 month before my parents abandoned me. The timing couldn't be coincidence. They had known about my inheritance, and they had left me behind anyway. The Watkins Foundation called while I was still processing the inheritance bombshell. We'd been selected as finalists for their grant and needed to prepare a presentation for their board. Under normal circumstances, this would have been cause for celebration. The foundation's backing would transform Safe Space from a scrappy student initiative into a legitimate nonprofit. But I was distracted, my thoughts circling back to my grandmother's unexpected legacy. After consulting with Eleanor, I contacted the Mexican law firm handling the estate. They confirmed everything. The inheritance was legitimate. The money was mine. And, most tellingly, notification had been sent to my parents as my legal guardians over a year ago when I was still 19. They kept this from me, I told Professor Wilkins during one of our regular dinners. They knew I had this inheritance coming and still put my stuff in garbage bags. She set down her fork. "Have you considered why?" "Money," I said bitterly, They probably thought they deserved it more than I did. Perhaps, she conceded. But hiding an inheritance is difficult. You would have found out eventually. Maybe they were planning to tell me on their terms, to make me grateful, dependent. I pushed my plate away, appetite gone. Or maybe they never planned to tell me at all. The inheritance funds were transferred to my account 3 days before the Watkins Foundation presentation. I hadn't decided what to do with the money, but its presence offered a strange security. For the first time since finding my childhood home empty, I felt financially untethered from my past. The Watkins presentation was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon in May. I arrived at the Foundation's downtown offices an hour early, reviewing my notes in the sleek waiting area. Our proposal requested $300,000 over 3 years to expand Safe Spaces services beyond the university to the broader community. Eleanor arrived 20 minutes before the scheduled time, impeccable in a charcoal suit. "Ready?" she asked, sitting beside me. "As I'll ever be," I replied, straightening my own carefully selected blazer, navy blue, professional but not intimidating. "The board can seem formal," she warned, "but they care about impact. Focus on the human stories, how safe space changes lives." We were escorted into a boardroom where 8 people sat around a polished table. I recognized several from my research: local business leaders, philanthropists, a former judge. The Foundation's director, William Watkins himself, rose to greet us. "Ms. Rose, Ms. Grayson, welcome," he said, gesturing toward the presentation area. "We've been impressed by your written proposal. Show us why Safe Space deserves our support." I connected my laptop to their projector and began. The presentation outlined Safe Space's journey from student project to community resource, highlighting key cases and systemic impacts. Eleanor chimed in with legal context, explaining how our model filled gaps in existing services. 20 minutes in, as I was describing our vision for expansion, the boardroom door opened. A Foundation assistant whispered something to Mr. Watkins, who nodded. "I apologize for the interruption," Mr. Watkins said. "Ms. Rose, there are some people here claiming to be your family. They're quite insistent on speaking with you." My heart stopped. "My family? They say it's urgent," he added, looking uncomfortable. "We can ask them to wait until we finish." Eleanor touched my arm supportively. "Your call, Jasmine." I took a steadying breath. After months of unanswered calls, my parents had tracked me down to perhaps the most important professional moment of my young career. The timing couldn't be worse or more telling. "Please tell them I'll speak with them after the presentation," I said, my voice remarkably steady. "This is too important to interrupt." Mr. Watkins nodded approvingly, and the assistant left to deliver my message. I turned back to the presentation, but inside, my mind was racing. What could possibly be so urgent after nearly a year of silence? I finished the presentation on autopilot, my voice professional despite the emotional turbulence beneath. The board asked insightful questions, which I answered thoroughly, determined not to let my personal drama affect this opportunity. When they finally thanked us and promised a decision within 2 weeks, I felt hollow rather than hopeful. "You were excellent," Eleanor said as we gathered our materials, especially under the circumstances. Outside the boardroom, my parents and Gabriel waited in the reception area. My mother rose when she saw me, her face a complex mixture of emotions: hope, fear, determination. My father remained seated, his expression guarded. Gabriel hovered awkwardly between them, looking everywhere but at me. "Jasmine," my mother began, stepping forward. "We need to talk." Eleanor squeezed my shoulder. "I'll give you privacy. Call me later." I nodded gratefully, then turned to my family. "Why are you here? How did you even find me?" "We saw the newspaper article about your housing program," my mother explained. "It mentioned the Watkins presentation today. We've been trying to reach you for months." "I'm aware," I said coolly. 247 calls is hard to miss. My father finally stood. "This has gone on long enough, Jasmine. You're being childish." A bitter laugh escaped me. Childish? I came home to find my belongings in garbage bags. You sold our house without telling me. You abandoned me. And I'm the childish one. We made a mistake, my mother said, her voice trembling. We want to make it right. Now you want to make it right? I asked. After a year? After I've rebuilt my entire life without you? Why now? Gabriel shifted uncomfortably. Just hear them out, Jazz. I know about the inheritance, I said flatly. Is that why you're suddenly interested in reconciliation? Because the money came through. My father's face darkened. You've always been so quick to judge. And you've always been so quick to discard, I countered. You knew about my grandmother's estate last March. You kept it from me, then threw me away. My mother's eyes widened. I know everything, I confirmed. The question is, what do you want now? The foundation's reception area wasn't the place for a family reckoning, so we relocated to a nearby coffee shop. I sat across from them, maintaining physical and emotional distance as they attempted to explain the inexplicable. We were ashamed, my mother admitted, cradling her untouched coffee. The foreclosure. Your father lost his job, and I couldn't make enough cleaning houses. We couldn't tell you. So instead of asking for help, you abandoned me. I kept my voice low, controlled. We found out about your grandmother's money right after you left for spring semester, my father explained. The lawyers said you'd inherit when you turned 21. We thought if we moved, started over somewhere new, we could fix our finances before you found out. By selling the house and leaving me with nothing, we panicked, my mother said. Your father thought you would be better off without our problems. You had your scholarship, your university, friends. And now? I pressed. Why this sudden change of heart? They exchanged glances. Gabriel spoke up. They made a terrible mistake, Jazz. They know that now. The safe space thing, my dad interrupted. We noticed what you've done in the press. We came to the realization that we had lost something valuable. Your successful daughter, I translated coldly. No, protested my mother. Our household. Our relationship. I examined them, these individuals who had molded and then destroyed my childhood. With noticeable gray strands in her black hair, my mother appeared older. My father's shoulders dropped under his old jacket, as if he had somehow decreased. Gabriel's childish features had matured, and he had grown 1 inch. I've built a new life, I eventually said. New relationships. Individuals that respect me, regardless of my achievements. Insisted, we're still your family, my dad. I slowly looked into his eyes. Family doesn't put your belongings in garbage bags. I got up from the table, put down enough money to buy all of our beverages, and got ready to go. I don't require a resolution. I've made progress. But first, respect my limits if you really want to make things right. I experienced an unexpected feeling as I was leaving. Not approval or validation, but a silent power. I had walked away intact, having confronted my abandoners on my own terms. The Watkins Foundation contacted the next morning. The whole grant amount had been given to Safe Space Initiative, plus an extra $50,000 for operating costs. I was called that afternoon by a major news organization about include safe space in a piece about creative approaches to housing justice. 2 weeks later, millions of people saw the tale, including my parents, I found out later. They didn't give another call. The family you create for yourself might occasionally outlast the one you were born into. I also realized that I would never again gauge my value by the opinions of others as I looked to the future.